Hey, what's going on YouTube? Welcome to Post Cologne. Today I'm going to be unboxing 3 new Middle Eastern fragrances I recently got in, including Maison Alhambra's Fabulo Intense. So let's jump into it. All right, we are back with another unboxing first impressions video of 3 new Middle Eastern fragrances that I recently got in a haul from Fragrance Buy. Links will be down in the description if you decide you want to check any of these fragrances out. Also have a coupon code. Save yourself $5 off your first purchase at Fragrance Buy if you decide you want to shop with them. Pretty excited about this one. I got 3 new Middle Eastern fragrances, 1 from Armaf, 1 from Afnan, and 1 from Alhambra. So Maison Alhambra's Fabulo Intense, the Tom Ford line of dupes, clones inspired buys. So really eager to check these ones out. So let's quit screwing around. Let's get into it. All right, first up, we're gonna go to the House of Armaf. And this one, I've been on the fence for a little while. Heard mixed reviews. I've had a few people recommend it in the comments section, but I've heard online otherwise that it's not that great, but we're gonna find out today. And that's Armaf's Derby Clubhouse Ascot. So scooped this one up for $19 at Fragrance Buy and heard mixed reviews, and we're gonna find out what I think right now. All right, there we have the box presentation for Armaf's Derby Clubhouse Ascot. Pretty much a straightforward brown cardboard box. A little bit of texture on it with this emblem, but otherwise nothing to it. So let's see what the bottle looks like. All right, so there we have the bottle presentation for Armaf's Derby Clubhouse Ascot. I do have their Derby Clubhouse Blanche, very similar bottle, only that one's white, and that's a Silver Mountain water clone. I actually kind of like that one, so that's why I bought this one. So otherwise, this is pretty straightforward. Bottle cap on this, fairly heavy metal, and the atomizer on this sucker. Pretty decent atomizer, get the job done. But what does this smell like? So right off the jump, just smelling this in the air from testing that atomizer. This does have a bit of an old school sort of vibe going on to it. It's got some greenness to it. It's got some clove notes, some other spices that are mixed in there. It's got a bit of a kind of a synthetic tobacco-y sort of vibe going on to it right now. So it does have a little bit of that kind of 80s, 90s, you know, old school masculine vibe going on in the air right now. But let's get this on paper, see what we got. Right off the jump, you do get those top notes. There's a lemon bergamot combination going on here. So it has that sharp citrus going on, but it's quickly being overtaken by some more kind of green elements to it. Some of that warm spiciness I had mentioned. Clove, nutmeg sort of working in. Got a little bit of that tobacco I was mentioning starting to come through. It doesn't have too much of a natural sort of tobacco, like a nice earthy cigar type of tobacco. This has got a little bit kind of a synthetic-y, plasticky kind of vibe going on to it right now. There's a little bit of oak moss and cedar coming through, and there's almost kind of like a very dark, old, masculine soapiness kind of happening to this right now. This is a little interesting. Yeah, as this is opening up, the labdanum is coming through, so it's giving it a very kind of like smoky, heavy, incensey vibe. Getting a little bit ambery, so it's getting a little bit dusty, a little bit darker right now. Still has those green elements to it and those warm spices moving through. The clove is starting to pop through a little bit more than anything else. Very much got that kind of old school sort of vibe. So again, this kind of reminds me of my father. This is, a lot of ways, this is something that he might wear. There is a cedar note that's coming through, but it doesn't have that typical kind of light, airy, almost peppery style of cedar, like a sauna type of cedar. This has almost got kind of a wetness to it, almost kind of like a muskiness to the cedar that's kind of mixing in there with that incense running through it. So it's not like an overly smoky, it's just got this kind of heaviness to it, this warm spiciness to it, those green notes working through. I can't quite pick out, aside from like that masculine vibe, how I'd really describe this, to be honest. Yeah, as this is starting to settle down a little bit more, it's starting to get very dark. It has a very fall sort of vibe to it. So it's not overly woody, but it has that greenness, it has that kind of vegetal sort of vibe going on to it with a little bit of those woods with that kind of smokiness that's working through. The tobacco is starting to get a little bit better. It doesn't have that plasticky kind of feel I was mentioning before. It is starting to get a little bit more kind of natural, kind of tobacco leaf sort of vibe going on to it, but it's not super forward. Getting really musky, and those warm spices, particularly that clove, is really pushing through. So it's clove, it's this kind of wet, dank cedar, a little bit of oak moss, musk, that smoky labdanum that's working through. Very kind of old school masculine vibe. This is kind of like 80s power suit kind of vibe going on to it. This is kind of your dad's aftershave sort of vibe going on to it. Not a barbershop style of aftershave, but it's just got that kind of, again, my father's from the 1980s is when I first kind of came across, you know, a dad's cologne, and this has kind of got that dad's cologne kind of vibe to me. Interesting vibe going on to this. I don't dislike this. I'm just not sure if I like this. I'm I'm a little confused. I'm torn right now. So let's skip to the dry down, see how this kind of settles down, and see if there's anything develops with it, and we'll go from there. All right, so we're back with the dry down of Armaf's Derby Club Ascot. It's been just over an hour. Let this settle down, do its own thing. Not a whole lot's changed, to be quite honest. This is pretty much the same fragrance it was the initial 5 minutes as it is in the dry down. Still has that old school masculine sort of vibe going on to it. Very dated though. I'm going to say this is kind of an old school style of fragrance. I'm not sure what it's trying to do exactly though. There's no note that it's not like a tobacco fragrance. It's not like a fougere fragrance necessarily. It's trying to be both. Has those warm spiciness, like the clove comes forward fairly heavy. Incense that's in here, musky, again with that wet cedar that's in here. It just has that kind of like 80s vibe to me. I don't dislike it, it's just, I don't know when I'm gonna wear this necessarily. This doesn't have that kind of like night out on the town kind of vibe where I'm gonna be impressing everybody. Everyone's gonna think I kind of smell like an old man. So this might be a little bit of kind of a personal fragrance. Might just kick around the house if I'm feeling a little nostalgic or whatever. But overall, it's okay. It's nothing special. Like I said, if you're into old school style of fragrances, this might be something you wanna check out. But for me personally, like, I like kind of an old school fougere, but I like a little bit of a modern twist to it. Even with barbershop fragrances, I like it to have a little bit of kind of modern twist to it, but this one just doesn't get it there for me. So unfortunately, this is just gonna be kind of a every so often, if I'm in the mood, I can put this on and get that old school 80s vibe going on, but not gonna be a out and about sort of fragrance. But overall for 19 bucks, I don't know, maybe a little bit of a waste for me. But if you like old school fragrances, like I said, this might be worth checking out. That's Armaf's Derby Club Ascot. All right, up next, going to the house of Afnan. And this is one that I've also heard mixed reviews on, but I'm very curious about it, and it is getting to be the springtime here, and this is supposed to be kind of a woody, piney sort of vibe going on to it, so I had to check it out. And that's Afnan's Supremacy Noir. Scoop this bad boy up for $30 at Fragrance Buy. I do have the Supremacy Incense and the In Oud, and I really like those ones. Those are like two of my favorite fragrances, to be honest. And so I'm gonna see if the Supremacy line can keep that going, keep that reputation up. So let's dive in, find out. All right, and there we have the box presentation for Afnan Supremacy Noir. Not much to it. Does have kind of a texture to it with some kind of, you know, emblem that's on the front. Not too much going on in the back. Overall, just another plain cardboard box. It's got a bit of a plasticky cover to it, but nothing special. So let's see what the bottle looks like. All right, there we have the bottle presentation for Supremacy Noir. Similar to the other Supremacy bottles, I do like this kind of ring cap to it. It's just kind of nice added flair to it. Nice thick heavy bottle, and this is a nice thick heavy metal, just like the other ones. Atomizer on this bad boy. Decent atomizer on this. Will get the job done, but what does this smell like? So right out the gate, just smelling this in the air from testing that atomizer, you really get that pine note that's coming through, that kind of earthy, dry forest pine. It's really nice. I like this, smelling this in the air right now. So let's get this on paper. Let's dive into this sucker. Really nice, bright, fresh, woody style of opening to this. Very dry sort of pine coming in there. Juniper, this nice tart bergamot in there to give it that kind of energetic, invigorating sort of nature. But this pine note that's in here is just absolutely gorgeous. A little bit of sweetness coming through from like some clary sage and amber. So it's got that kind of ambery sweetness, a little bit of that dustiness, and that clary sage. It's got that aromatic nature to it, but a little touch of that kind of green sweetness coming through. And it could be some coming from that pine too, a little bit of that balsamic sweetness that you might get from a pine note. Very woody, very piney, but very like lively, energetic, kind of uplifting. With Noir, I was kind of figuring this would be kind of like a dark, heavy fragrance, but this is very like light, like dry spring forest on like a really nice, like kind of brisk sort of day. This is nice. There is a touch of smokiness that's starting to move through. I think it's coming from the labdanum. It's giving it a little bit of an incensey, smoky vibe, but for the most part, you're still getting those really nice pine accords, that woodiness. It's starting to kind of balance off against those amber clary sage notes, and there's a little bit of earthy patchouli coming through. But overall, I really like this opening. This is very, again, woodsy, but uplifting and kind of energetic style of kind of woods fragrance. Little kisses of smoke working through, and just like a little bit of sweetness, so aromatic sweetness kind of working around the edges. I'm a big fan of this already, just from that opening. But let's skip to the dry down, see how this kind of unfolds, and we'll go from there. All right, so we are back with the dry down of Afnan's Supremacy Noir. Been just about an hour now. Let this settle down, do its own thing. It did change a little bit. The leather in this came forward a little bit more. I wouldn't say this is a leathery style of fragrance, but it does have kind of that leathery texture to it, a little bit of that kind of poking through, but that pine has really stuck around. It has a little bit more kind of an ambery warmness coming through. Again, it's a nice balance of those kind of piney, woody notes with some of that kind of amber, clary sage, aromatic, sweet touches, a little bit of dustiness that's coming through. And like I just mentioned, that leather pokes through a little bit more. I really like this one. This is a really nice woody style of fragrance, but it's different. It kind of sets itself apart with that pine that comes through. Has that sharpness to it, but it's also still has that, it's not as kind of bright and breezy as it was in the opening. It has gotten a little bit darker and kind of settled down, got a little heavier, but it's still got kind of a lightness to it, an aromatic nature, that kind of like that pininess when you're in a forest and it's a nice crisp day where it kind of like cools the back of your eyeballs with that kind of sharp pininess. I hope that makes sense. That's what it feels like the edge of a forest on a brisk spring morning, a warm, brisk spring morning. That's how this is coming across. I really like this one. Yeah, beautiful fragrance, very well blended. There's no like screechiness to this. There's no like synthetic edges to this that's coming through. Like from the opening to the dry down, this has been a very pleasant fragrance, very like smooth in that sense. Like when you get those piney notes, it can come across like a bit of a cleaner. It does not have that sort of feel whatsoever. So like the other Supremacy line, like the incense, the Oud, I'm impressed with this one on the quality of it. And for 30 bucks, super pumped that I picked this one up. Glad this is in my collection. If you like those kind of piney, woody sort of fragrances, little hints of leather, kind of nice aromatics in it, definitely worth checking out. That's Afnan's Supremacy Noir. All right, last, and hopefully not least, we got Maison Alhambra's Fabulo Intense. I scooped this sucker up for $23 at Fragrance Buy, and I have a few of these Maison Alhambra Tom Ford clones, and none of them have been disappointed so far. They've all been very good fragrances, decent quality, and pretty close to the original Tom Ford. This is supposed to be a clone of Effin' Fabulous. I can't pronounce the whole thing on here because YouTube might penalize me, but it's supposed to be a clone of that one. Curious to see what this is all about, so let's bust into it, find out. All right, so there we have the box presentation for Maison Alhambra's Fabulo Intense. Same as the other ones, it comes in that very similar Tom Ford looking box. It's nice thick cardboard, has a little bit of a texture to it, which I do quite enjoy. Slide off top to it. And again, they're not trying to hide what they're doing here with the Tom Ford clones. The bottle is very much the same. This does have a nice matte black kind of finish to it. I do like that. The other ones are a little bit more glossy glass. This has got that nice matte black finish to it. Cap on this, very lightweight plastic, but it doesn't feel cheap. It's got a little bit of girth to it, I suppose. And the atomizer on this, decent atomizer, will get the job done. But what does this smell like? So right off the jump, just smelling this in the air, this does smell like Effin' Fabulous from Tom Ford. Has that like bitter almond sort of vibe, that kind of aromatic nature to it, a little bit of sweetness coming from the vanilla, and then there's a faint kind of leather accord that's in the air as well. But the almond and the vanilla is what I'm smelling most in the air right now, and it does have that kind of aromatic nature to it. Very, very nice so far. So let's get this on paper, so see what we're doing with. Yep, so right off the jump here, getting off paper, what I'm getting is, I'm getting that lavender, I'm getting this nice bitter almond, and I'm getting that vanilla all working together. It's a nice contrast of that kind of sweet vanilla, the bitterness, nuttiness of that almond, and that kind of aromatic, semi-clean lavender that's coming through. It's a nice juxtaposition of those aromatics and those sweet accords and that kind of bitterness that's coming through. There's also a little bit of powderiness that's working in there. Could be from the tonka bean, it could be from that orris root that's in the mids apparently. Does have a little bit of a powderiness, not overly powdery at this point, but nice opening. I do enjoy this so far. It's a very soft fragrance, like it's very gentle. It's not like obtrusive. It's like a nice kind of cozy, comforting scent bubble with that sweetness, the bitterness, that aromatic nature that's coming through. I don't detect any of the leather quite pushing forward quite yet. It hasn't. It's very vanilla, almond, lavender forward at this moment. The base notes haven't kind of crept through yet at this very moment. Yeah, this isn't changing a whole lot as this kind of develops. This is still remaining very much a lavender, almond, vanilla with a bit of that amberiness coming through, a little bit of that powderiness coming through. I can't pick up on that leather that's supposed to be in here, that's supposed to be, you know, pushing forward a little bit more. I'm not picking that up quite yet, so let's give this a little time, let it dry down, do its own thing, and go from there. All right, so we're back with the dry down of Maison Alhambra's Fabulo Intense. In just over an hour, let this settle down, do its own thing. The leather has come forward finally. I was thinking that people were lying that the leather wasn't in here, but the leather has come forward a little bit more. But it's not like a leather fragrance when you think of that. It's not like a rare carbon or like a velvet oud from Lattafa style of leather fragrance. It's there, but you still get that bitter almond that's sitting there. So it's still got that kind of nuttiness that's in there. Almost a little bit kind of a peanut accord. So sometimes with leather fragrances, I get like a bit of a peanut style of accord that comes through. So that is coming through, but you get that kind of bitter almonds vibe that's still moving in there. You still get that little bit of vanilla sweetness that's moving through, some amberiness. Like it's got that sweet amber that's a little bit dark, a little bit dusty. The lavender clary sage that was in the opening, that kind of clean, fresh aromatics, it's there, but it's kind of sitting behind all of that right now. It's really kind of faded back. But yeah, it's a very interesting scent accord, much like the Tom Ford Effin' Fabulous. It is like a little bit different. And this one, you know, hits that same sort of mark. It's got that kind of powdery texture, that leathery texture, those sweet accords with a little bit of that slight aromatic, bitter, as well as, you know, that leather peanutty sort of vibe going on to it. So I like this one. This is quite nice. I do enjoy the Effin' Fabulous. I've never really justified paying the price for that one to get a whole bottle, but I've had samples. I've had a decant of that one. I think this is a good alternative for 23 bucks, you know, pending performance. And the Effin' Fabulous didn't really last all that long either, but for 23 bucks, I think this is definitely worth the money if you're into that scent DNA, because it's just a really enjoyable fragrance that's has enough uniqueness and a little bit of complexity to it that's gonna kind of set you apart from like your typical run-of-the-mill style of designer fragrances. So pretty pumped on this one. The Tom Ford dupe line that Maison Alhambra has been doing, I've yet to be disappointed, and this one held up as well. So really excited about this one. Definitely think it's worth checking out. That's Maison Alhambra's Fabulo Intense. All right, so there you have it. That's 3 new Middle Eastern fragrances that I got in a recent haul from Fragrance Buy. I think I went 2 for 3. That Armaf, I don't think that's gonna be a big hit for me. I will get it on skin. Really enjoyed that Afnan Supremacy Noir. That's one I'm definitely gonna get it on skin, be testing that one out, do a full review, because so far I'm really digging that one. And the Maison Alhambra, if you like the Effin' Fabulous DNA, you're gonna enjoy that one. I enjoy that one. I think it's a nice scent DNA, just enough uniqueness to it that it kind of sets you apart. So pretty pumped on 2 of these 3 fragrances, but I want to hear from you guys. What's some fragrances I need to get in my next haul that you want to see me give my first impressions and review? Comment down below. I love hearing from you guys. I love getting your input, hidden gems, different recommendations. Appreciate you. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see y'all next time.